mamaya makikita nyo sa experiment ni Ma'am Daang, may magbabago ng kulay, yung sa akin naman may bumubula, tapos yung kay Sir Chester naman medyo trial and error kung saan magbabalance. So with that, parang ibini-build up nyo yung students kasi 'di ba pag yung mga students ngayon minsan parang na-enjoy din nila yung mga trial and error, parang tinitingnan nila. Pero of course, yung kay Sir Chester, backed up yun ng formula. So at the end of the discussion or at the end of the experiment, pwedeng ipasok doon sa pwedeng ipasok ni Sir Chester yung explanation niya doon sa formula. And also, katulad na sinabi ko kanina, yung mga results or yung mga outcome or yung mga observation ng each step should be, halimbawa, may change in color, change in temperature, or change in shape, change in face, yung mga ganun, para mas ma-enjoy ng mga bata. With that, parang nagkakaroon sila ng, nagkakaroon ng more dramatic effect dun sa ating homemade experiment. So ayun, yun na po yung 6 topics, 6 elements on how to design an experiment. So I guess si Ma'am Daang po ang mag-uumpisa dun sa homemade experiment ni Ma'am Daang. So bali, ang mangyayari po nito ngayon, magpapakita po kami ng isang homemade experiment na ginawa namin sa bahay, syempre. And number 2, yung virtual labs or simulation na nakita namin sa internet. So meron din kaming i-propose na website kung saan nyo makikita tong mga virtual simulation. So we will start with the homemade experiment. So Ma'am Daang,
Yes,
take it
please,
away po.
proceed na to the next slide.
Hindi pa pala ako tapos, sorry. Meron pa palang na-excite ako. Okay, sorry, na-excite ako. Meron pa palang focus on facts na technology. Pero hindi naman po namin dinidemonize yung technology dito. We just want to emphasize na even though we have complex simulation or even though we have simplistic approach or methodology, dapat we focus on facts. So nakalagay dyan, representation is a newspaper because sa newspaper makikita tayo ng maraming facts, walang fake news. Hindi katulad sa social media, napakaraming fake news. So sa newspaper, mostly facts ang makikita natin. Alright, so as I've said earlier, kailangan mag-build up tayo on the basic concept. So at the end of the day, the students should have a great foundation of basic concepts of the experiment that they are doing. So this can be reinforced through a pre-lab discussion, or yun nga sinabi ko kanina, pwede kang mag-insert na mga concepts in between the steps of the experiment. Also, complex and simplistic approach might miss the key message. So ito yung sinasabi ko kanina. Kung virtual lab yan or simulation or gaano man ka-complex yung simulation na experiment na ginagawa mo, you should go back to the basics. So kailangan maganda ang foundation kasi if you have complex experiments, mahirap siyang intindihin kung hindi mo alam yung basic concepts behind those complex experiments. And also, yung simplistic approach katulad naman ng homemade experiments, baka naman napasimple natin ng sobra pero na-miss out nating i-discuss yung mga basic concepts, basic terms, technical definitions of all of the stuff that is incorporated in your experiment. So, lagi nating tatandaan na it's better to have a good foundation rather than yung parang mag-proceed ka na agad sa complex equation, mag-proceed ka na agad sa simple methods or sa shortcuts. Kailangan you will have a good foundation on basic concepts before you do the actual experimentation. So ayun, yun pala, dun pala nagtatapos yung sa akin, Ma'am Daang. Okay, so si Ma'am Daang na for her experiment.
Okay. So next slide na. Alright, for the sample chemistry experiment that I chose, actually I look into acid-base chemistry. Tapos siguro nakikita nyo na rin to. Usually kasi ito yung ginagawa to encourage yung mga toddlers, yung younger kids, para ma-pick yung interest nila sa science. Tapos titingnan natin kung paano natin magagamit to sa actual, say, high school chemistry. No? So, in this, so next slide, there are several I divided yung hands-on or wet lab into 2. So yung first, yung identification ng substance. So if it is an acid or a base through the use of a plant pigment as indicator, and then titration of an acid with a base. So Sa general chemistry, yun naman yung usual na ginagawa. So the concepts that are presented na maha-highlight dun sa experiment, so of course yung idea ng acids and base. Tapos you can also introduce yung Bronsted-Lowry definition about proton transfer, particularly if you go into the titration reaction. And then along with this, since we're using a plant pigment, so ma-introduce din sila ano ba yung mga nagbibigay ng color sa plant. So plant pigment and their corresponding solubilities. So importante yun, may, na ma-note nila. And then yung idea ng indicator, sa in particular sa neutralization or acid-base reaction. Tapos yung technique na titration. Although medyo crude yung titration technique natin dito, but it will still suffice do sa learning na makukuha ng mga bata as I will highlight later. So next slide, Marty. I think the next slide is the video. So let's watch the short video. Okay. So kung mapapansin nyo dun sa experiment, di ba, parang ang simple lang niya, but yung sequences ng performance, so first, pinrepare muna syempre yung indicator die. So may mga glimpses doon na nakita tayo, di ba? And then, tinest muna natin yung indicator die, yung plant pigment from the red cabbage into known substances. Yung alam natin na acid talaga siya at alam natin na base talaga siya. Yung example ko would be vinegar. So alam naman natin na acid siya. Better if alam natin kung ano yung acid component talaga ng vinegar. Tapos yung antacid. Kaya siya tinawag na antacid kasi meron siyang basic component na mag-re-reduce ng acid sa stomach natin. So yun yung ginamit ko doon sa experiment. Anong purpose nun? That is to establish kung ano yung color kapag acidic saka basic. So, yung sequences important. Dapat ma-establish muna natin kung ano yung color ba niya sa acidic tapos basic. Tapos yung next two, actually you can add some more. Pwede nyo na siyang i-test. So, using your idea or knowledge na itong kulay niya kapag acidic, ito yung kulay niya kapag basic. Tapos pag tinry mo na siya into other substances, you can have at least an idea if it is acidic or basic. Okay? So, next slide, Marty. This is actually some variations that I'm recommending na you can employ. First off, of course, you can test other substances. So there's a lot that you can test as long as it's available at home, di ba? Pwede mo siyang i-test. Tapos, to make it a little bit more in terms of the color, you can have a pH meter. I-test mo, i-vary mo yung pH niya, say by adding a certain substance to make it from a more acidic to more basic. Tapos, i-establish mo. So, meron yung variation sa kulay. So, yung sa shading ng pink or red and then sa shading ng violet to blue, magkakaroon yun ng differentiation. So, mas maganda yung differentiation ng pagiging acidic or basic kasi mas nakikita mo talaga yung differences in color. And then, okay, so actually, may nag-comment dito, Marty, balik mo muna ulit. So, you can try other plant samples. So, just like when I was introduced, I am here in the US right now. So, ang available sa akin ay red cabbage. Pero sa atin, sa Pilipinas, I think it is more available to have yung red kamote tops or yung isang comment sa chat box which is the blue ternate flower. Mm-hmm. So, I think yun yung nilalagay sa kanin to make it blue. I heard that it is also possible to be used as an acid-base indicator. So, pwede natin gamitin yung mga ganon. Tapos, pwede natin improvise yung materials at saka yung mismong method natin. Kung mapapansin nyo sa method, sinabi ko doon, ni microwave ko. Diba? Kung wala kayong microwave, you can use warm water or hot water to extract the plant pigment. Kung wala kayong coffee filter, you can use a white cloth or yung katsa, diba? So you can always improvise it to suit kung ano yung availability, kung ano yung available na materials sa inyo, sa bahay nyo or dun sa mabibili nyo readily. Okay, so yung next part, okay, these are the questions naman that you can ask. So syempre, kailangan build up mo yung curiosity nila. First off, yung mga plant pigments, meron ako medyo highlight doon na segment doon sa video. I hope you recognize it. Diba after extraction, pinakita ko yung itsura ng leaves after extraction. Medyo nawala na yung pagka-color violet niya, pero may pagka-color green pa siya. So, explain natin bakit ganon. Diba kasi yung main pigment na for violet, yung anthocyanin, it is water soluble. Pero yung chlorophyll, it is not water soluble. So it takes, I think it's in alcohol, dapat siya ma-extract. So yun yung mga ganong thinking, dapat i-invoke natin sa mga students. Hindi lang sila basta-basta gumagawa. Tapos, why use warm water? Pwede bang cold water na lang or room temp water. So yung idea ng using warm water, increasing the temperature a little bit, we're increasing the amount of the pigment that will be extracted. So yung mga ganong thinking. Tapos yung identify yung active acid and base components in the test substances. So for example, sa vinegar, it is acetic acid. Dun sa antacid na sample na meron ako, it is said in there that calcium carbonate is the main base there. Tapos yung Dawn, that's a liquid, dishwashing liquid. I think it's a sodium lauryl sulfate ang main component nun. And then baking soda is sodium bicarbonate. And then you can test some more. Basta pa-identify nyo kung ano yung meron doon. Ano yung acid talaga doon. Ano yung base talaga doon. Muriatic acid is HCl. Tapos, you can write the acid-base equation, particularly kapag in-invoke mo na yung definition ng, say, Bronsted-Lowry. So yung acetic acid, isusulat mo yung formula, tapos ilalagay mo yung water sa another component. Ano yung magiging product niya upon dissociation? So that will account for if it is an acid or a base. Dapat nagre-release siya ng proton or ng hydroxide.